Also right now, a modern-day march to stamp out what civil rights leaders call an effort to suppress the vote, culminating in historic fashion. The Reverend Al Sharpton is leading the 2012 march from Selma, Alabama to the state capitol in Montgomery. He'll be speaking shortly, and we'll listen to that directly when he does start. But you know, this year's event, it recreates the 1965 march that led to the Voting Rights Act, which outlawed discrimination at the polls. Leaders hope, and they are saying at this moment, that this week's march will call attention to modern-day roadblocks to ballot access and immigration reform. Jeff Johnson, the executive editor of Politic365.com, joins me right now live from Montgomery, Alabama. Now, we know Al Sharpton is just about to take the stage. As he is speaking, okay, he's speaking now. Let's stop and listen. Jeff, we'll get right to you.
Lies and distortions that I want to straighten out as we proceed in the next phase of this movement. One, they have instituted and have proposed voter ID laws saying that they want to stop voter fraud. The only voter fraud that we can find is the statement that there is widespread voter fraud. The fraud is to use non-existent widespread voter fraud to try and suppress and stop people from voting. 31 states are proposing changes in voter ID, yet they cannot tell us why they need to change the law. Right here in Alabama, they changed the voter ID law in 2003. They said you could use your utility bill, your college cards, and other things that many people had. Now they want to change it again. I asked one of the legislators in this building, why are you changing it again? He said, we have widespread fraud. I said, since 2003, you've only had 3 voter fraud cases. None of them had anything to do with ID. You are not trying to stop voter ID fraud. You are identifying who you want to vote, and we are not going to allow you to do it. He said, well, Reverend, we got to use ID to get on the plane. Why not ID to vote? And I agree with that. Let's have the same ID we had when you ran Ronald Reagan for president. Let's have the same ID we had when you ran George Bush Sr. for president. Let's have the same ID you had when we had Bill Clinton for president. Let's have the same ID we had when we elected George Bush Jr. for president. But you're not going to get to the re-election of Barack Obama, and now we need a different ID. We're going to play the game by one set of rules. They're in the middle of the Republican primaries right now. Isn't it funny? The Republicans in Alabama legislature and 30 other states want voter ID in November, but they don't want voter ID at their own primaries. Nobody asked for photo ID in Iowa. Nobody asked for photo ID in Massachusetts Super Tuesday. Why you want our photo and we didn't see you showing your photo? There's another lie. They have these inhumane immigration laws. One thing to say we can't open the borders, but it's another thing to tell people you can't service people. You can't care for those that are sick. You can't minister to those that need help. The laws in Alabama are not immigration laws. They're Jim Crow laws. You have imposed Jim Crow laws in the name of immigration. And then you turn around to the black community and got some confused, run around lying about Latinos took our jobs. We didn't have no jobs for them to take. Didn't nobody take our jobs. We were unemployed, double digit, before anybody ever came across the Mexican border. We are not each other's enemies. We're not each other's competition. We are not each other's adversary. If we lock arms like we did coming down Highway 80 and cooperate rather than compete, we can make America work for everybody. There are those that want to use the immigration laws, profile Latinos. Then they'll go from there to profiling Africans and Trinidadians and Haitians. If we allow it to start with Mexicans, it'll come to your house and mine. We are standing together, and we're telling you, just like 47 years ago, our fathers stood on these steps and fought for our right to vote and our right to live free of racism. We stand with the communities to tell you, you will repeal these immigration laws. Somebody said to me in Selma the first day, said, Reverend Al, aren't you concerned about people coming to this country and taking away things from American citizens? I said, you got the wrong guy. I had an uncle that fought in World War II who came home, and Germans and others could check in hotels he couldn't stay in. You didn't make no law about that. They could drink a cup of coffee where he couldn't drink a cup of coffee. You didn't make a law about that. You didn't start protecting the borders until people from a different color and a different language came. Don't play us cheap. We're smarter than that. Then they have this lie out, Fred Gray, about right to work states, where you don't have the ability or the right to organize unions. It is the right not to work law. It's not the right to work, it's the right not to work. It's to work without pensions. It's to work without having due process. It's to work without having collective bargaining. It's to give us to the mercy of the employer. We stand with labor because we're the laborers. It's not about unions using us. We use unions to protect ourselves. Reverend, are y'all with labor? We are labor. We are the same people. The people that are members of the unions are members of our churches, members of our organizations. We don't turn into different people. We're the same people. And we're going to stand together and fight together. Why did we march these 5 days? This is not a celebration of the past. It's a continuation of right now. We didn't come to commemorate what happened 47 years ago. We came to continue what happened 47 years ago. We praise and love those that paid the price 47 years ago. But the best compliment to them is to continue to fight right now. You can't dedicate a statue to Dr. King in Washington and then go to 31 states and revoke the voting rights bill he put on the books. You're trying to give us a symbol with no substance. Let me end by saying this is personal to me. When I got here, Monday night I went to do my TV show. I sat across the street here at the Bureau of Archives. A man came out and said he had a gift for me. I said, what is it? He said, well, we have the record of your ancestors here in Alabama. My mother was born, raised, and lives in Dothan. He gave me the record, how my great-great-grandfather, named Carter, was registered to vote and voted in 1867, 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation allowed people to vote. He showed me from the 1860s all the way to the 1890s how the Carters, who was my mother's family, voted in every election. Then it cut off all the way for 100 years. I said, well, what happened to all my relatives in those years? Those were the years they couldn't vote until they marched from Selma to Montgomery. Then my family's record put back up, and it connected back to my great-great-grandfather. He didn't know what he did for me, because I made a vow that they will never break the voting record of my family again. We gonna keep on voting, and you're not gonna take our right to vote. We are here to tell these legislators, and we're gonna leave and go around this country. 3 areas. We're going in the courts and challenge these voter ID laws. We're going into these states, and with labor, we're going to challenge all of the legislators that sponsor and support these laws. And we're going into churches and prepare our people so they can have the IDs as we continue to fight so that our vote will come out. We are not going to allow you to steal this election in advance. We saw the hanging chads in Florida. Now you're trying to come with another scheme of ID. We are smarter than that. We are wiser than that. We're ready for you. We didn't come this far to get tricked now. Whatever scheme you play, we'll be ready to meet you and beat you. Our fathers beat Jim Crow. We're going to beat James Crow Jr.
It is personal, as Reverend Al Sharpton says there in Selma, Alabama, the state capitol, on the steps there in Montgomery, as he's speaking, finishing the 5-day walk from Selma to Montgomery. Let's go to Jeff Johnson, who is there watching the event with us right now. And Jeff, as you sit there and you listen to what the Reverend has been saying, as well as to those who are returning after some 47 years, what's their perspective on what they're seeing today with 30 states requiring voter ID? 15 photo ID, and also seeing the different faces, the Latino faces, as the Reverend has just brought up. What's the reaction from those who have seen both times, back 47 years ago and today?
We stood up to you.
Well, I mean, I think that there are a number of people who are here that were a part of that original march that feel like this is a continuation of a fight that they were a part of 47 years ago. There are those that are also here that are young people that are feeling like they are part of the continuation of this movement, and they're saying that they want to continue to fight for not just the voting rights piece, but making sure that people understand that this is a united coalition. I think that's what you're hearing from people that are here almost more than anything else, that this is black and Latino and white, that it's labor and student, worker and others that are here to say that this is not a divided piece, that there are working folks and middle class folks who want to make sure that voting rights are established and that negative immigration laws are held at bay in some of these state legislators, Alabama being the first.
Thank you so much, Jeff Johnson, there with us on site with Reverend Al Sharpton from Politic365.com. Thank you. I want to remind you, be sure to catch the Reverend Al Sharpton and Politics Nation broadcasting live from the historic Dexter Avenue King Memorial Baptist Church. That's the church where Dr. King preached during some of the most critical days of the civil rights movement. That is tonight at 6 Eastern, only here on MSNBC. Stick around for that, surely.